Three gavel.
Okay. The meeting of the Corvallis School Board for June 16th, 2022 will come to order at 5:10 p.m. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In the interest of public health and safety for all community members, especially for immunocompromised individuals and their families, the Corvallis School Board will continue to offer a virtual option for board member and district personnel participation. Additionally, public comment is available at some meetings, both in person and virtually. Information about how to provide public comment is available on the Corvallis School District website. The board's agenda and packet, as well as a link to the district YouTube channel, are available on the school board page on the district website. Public meetings are live streamed on the district YouTube channel, and a recording is posted to the same channel, typically the day after the meeting. I'm grateful that this technology makes it possible for more community members to view and participate in school board meetings, given the flexibility provided by Oregon law. Tonight, we have Director Al-Adrawa, Director Jones, and myself in attendance in person. Director Tomini is participating virtually, and Directors Adams and Baker are excused. Is that everyone?
And
Oh, and White Bear is off. Director White Bear is also excused. Due to technology and connectivity limitations, some virtual participants attending may have their video off, some or at all times. So the first item on our agenda is the Oregon School Board Association work session with the board self-evaluation. So I will turn the meeting over to Kristen Miles.
Thank you. Thank you all for accommodating my crazy schedule. My hard stop is probably 5:55 just so I can log on to my class, last class of the term. So we'll just get going right away. I assume you all got the self-eval. I know that I sent some questions over that you could read, sort of prep. We'll go over those. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we will look at this. Just a second. And here we go. Okay. Should see the right thing. So the first thing I want to ask you, if you've got this in front of you, if you're able to access it, you've all seen it. The first thing I want to ask you is just to think about what you saw. And before we start making interpretations, I know this is hard to stick with, but really, what did you see as you flipped through this? What did you observe about the data? What I would have loved to have given you is a comparison between last time and this time, but we used a different instrument last time. So I can't give you that comparability, but next time. But what did you observe this time about the data? Sarah.
Yeah, so my sort of big picture notes that I wrote down were that we're good at sort of following the rules. And we have a good relationship with our superintendent, but where we struggle is in the relationship with the community and the things that aren't quite as prescribed by board rules or board policies.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. What else did you see?
Yeah. I would agree with Sarah. I think that the evaluation reflects a really strong relationship with the superintendent and a lot of strong rapport, and I think clearly good communication and a shared perspective on the direction for the district. But I don't know, this is like the 5th or 6th one of these that I've done, and I'm not sure that I've seen very much movement in how we think we interact with the community. Not as much movement as we should have seen for 6 of these.
Good observation. Thank you, Therese. Sammy?
Yeah, on the aggregated data, really an overview of you know, sometimes you want to see what's your strengths and where areas of development. So I can see really strong performance on 8, 9, 11, and 12 standards. So that's the learning organization, systems learning, our ethics and conduct and relationship with the superintendent, and our budgeting and financial accountability. It's a reminder that we gotta focus or we gotta leverage our strengths to do better and to address other areas of growth and opportunities of growth. And I share the same comments from Sarah and Therese. The one that stood out as needs lots of focus is community engagement.
Mhm. Great. Any other, Shauna?
I'll just build on what my colleagues on the board are sharing. I saw a lot of the same trends, and related to the community engagement piece was also standard number 6 around cultural responsiveness. And what came out to me in looking at some of the details of those results as well was the direct connection with building relationships, community responsiveness from a culturally responsive lens, and one that really looks at moving beyond some of the words and policies focused on equity and engagement, those values that we hold and talk about, to really thinking about how do we actually bring that out in practice.
Thank you. So you started talking about this a little bit, but is there anything else you'd want to add? What do you make of this? Like, what is your interpretation? I know you started talking about like, maybe we're not as good at community engagement as we thought, or maybe this is just something that's ongoing, but is there anything you would add to that? I know it's hard to stick with just observations. So is there anything you would add to what do you make of this? Sarah?
We're kind of comfortable in our bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not good at figuring out how to get out.
Ryan?
One of the things I was going to share and just give some credit to the board is that this is also the area that you are recognizing and an emphasis and focus on going. And so sometimes also when we are focused on that one specific area, we are also more critical of ourselves because that's the area that we want to see growth in. And so I would also say that I thought a lot about that as I was looking at those results, because even in the other categories, when it came to community engagement, the board gave themselves lower marks, even across category related to community engagement. And I think that it also just highlights that we're ramping up and preparing for additional work in that area.
Shauna?
I really appreciated that note that Ryan just shared. And I was just going to add to that around, I think that this is a board that's really committed to learning and growth, as Sammy was pointing out as well, in terms of ongoing learning. I really appreciated that there's a lot of emphasis across the aggregate data on developing areas, or on looking at maybe not so much on the accomplished side. I know for me, I really shied away from clicking anything as accomplished, thinking like there's always room for us to continue growing and learning and deepening what we do in meaningful ways. But also some areas where folks feel really strongly that we are being effective or feeling accomplished, but also a lot of areas that are developing, and that we see that as an area to I really hear that word and see that word as continuing to grow.
Mm-hmm. Sammy?
Really, to build on everything Shauna and Ryan said, I think one thing that stood out to me, and I think it's probably I want to ask it in the fourth question that you have, is whenever there's red and green at the same dimension or question, it gets me to think maybe we need to ask ourselves, what's our definition of this question or of this term, or where do we see the role of the board, or how do we assess what we have? It's either our definition or what we see. We could see it differently. So I really look forward for the conversation to see that potential opportunity for us to have a common understanding of what we want to accomplish and where are we right now.
That incongruency thing is something we will talk about a little bit later, because that's always like a really interesting piece of that. Ryan?
I think I'll hold till we get to that point too, because it's not the same comment, but it's related to just the development of a board as new members come on and other members leave, and how you maintain that that integrity and also the kind of the system knowledge. And so I'll just hold.
Okay. Great. Okay. Let me, Sammy, did you have something else? Or is your hand
No,
just,
good.
okay, okay. So you talked about this a little bit, Sarah, sorry. Oh,
Yeah, I mean, this was just sort of following up what Ryan said too, is that you have the development of the board, and we were just in a couple of years where we weren't doing. I think there were some areas that were already challenges, and then there were even more challenges and more, ineffective probably over the last 2 years than they had been before. And so I found myself, as I was going through the evaluation, thinking about, well, this is where I think we are now and what I'm evaluating, but wondering where we would have been if we hadn't, just had 2 years where we got disrupted.
yeah.
So I think I sort of looked at some of those discrepancies and wondered if that was playing a role too in some of this.
I have done a lot of these this year, and I think it's very fair to take all of this in context, right? Because as you look back, you're reflecting on what you, not what you are doing in the future, but what you have, the behaviors and the characteristics that you have exhibited. And I think you're absolutely right. Some of that is still, it has to be contextual and reactionary to the situation that you have found yourself in over the last few years. So I think it's absolutely fair to take a lot of this in context. And I also know you as well as a board that is constantly like looking for, I mean, there is nothing wrong with looking for a continuous improvement. There's nothing wrong with that. And I encourage you to also recognize your strengths. So we will talk about your strengths in a moment. But let me ask you, what's working? What is working? It's not just technical stuff. What else is working? Sammy. Oh, yeah.
Sound good.
I mean, I think the obvious things that are working are the relationships with the superintendent. And I think the relationships within the board that we're able to work together respectfully and have, our board, compared to what I've been hearing from other boards around the state. I think because of the good relationships we have, we've weathered challenges well and have been able to work together. And I think that's really been to the benefit of our schools and our students.
And how critical is that to have a good foundational relationship between the board and the superintendent, and then within the board as well? Absolutely. Those are two critical foundational pieces. Sammy, did you have something? Yes.
I just realized, last night was really sad moment for Newburyport, lost 2 of their board members. And I'm reflecting on what happened, how the conduct of some board members towards their colleagues. And I want to say, while we, in our self-assessments, we want to work more on community engagement, our understanding of the community values and the support of the communities to the board is unparalleled. And I don't say this word lightly, is unparalleled in the state. We have really strong community ties where we hear from the community, and when there is an issue, whether it's on social media or a family speaks about it, it comes to the board, we direct it to staff appropriately, and it informs our policy, whether immediately or through a deliberate process of policy development. I'm really proud of what we do as I compare ourselves to what's happening across the state and the nation. So I think that is working, and we need to make it better. And I'm glad that we're not settling with this, but it's a good point of reflection. I feel I want to highlight.
Thank you. Therese.
I would, well, similarly to what Sammy said, I think that the community engagement piece that we've highlighted as an area where we want to work is the fact that that's shared among all of us, I think really does speak to a level of collaboration and commitment to a shared vision about the role of the board, a shared understanding of the role of the board, that we all see room where our engagement with the community could be more positive, not more positive, it could be more, right? It could just be more. It could be something different. But on the other side of that, the interactions that we do have with the community largely reflect, I think, a positive sense that this board really is here to seek the best interest of our children and our community and investment in the future. And the work that we are doing is really geared toward that. And I have a lot of pride in sharing that vision with my colleagues, that I don't really come to these meetings wondering if there's going to be a battle over, a need in the district to meet or better support particular student groups. I know that among my colleagues, there's going to be a commitment to do that. Even if we have to figure out the right way to do it, the question of whether the commitment is there, I don't have that question. I know the commitment is there. And I think it is probably one of the things that makes us as a board the most accessible to the community in ways that other boards around the country, I don't think have. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is an area where, yes, this is a potential area of growth. And also I think a lot of the community has a lot of respect for the work and the perspectives that this board does bring. And I think that's important to remember.
And Therese, what you just said is also really important, because there's a whole lot of research behind collective efficacy and the belief that the team together, the belief in each other, and that the team together can do good things. And that belief, plus the singular belief that all students can learn, makes you have a net positive effect on student achievement. So those are really big deals. We've gone into a little bit about what needs improvement. So I'm going to ask you about, not that you won't have a chance to talk about that again, but do you have right now any questions for your board colleagues? I'm going to get into a little bit from your caring, disinterested third party, what I saw as like your strengths, what you said you need improvement. And then I'm going to go into a little bit about like, here's where you disagreed the most, and then end with what do you want to do with this? So we're going to get into those things, but I wondered if you left your own review of this with any questions for your colleagues. Therese.
Just one question that came to mind. I wondered how my colleagues were interpreting some of the key language in the questions. And so that when they were choosing between effective or developing, what was going through their mind? I know it was going through mine, but I realized that I don't know if there's more difference or less difference than appears in the results, because I don't really know if what is a comfortable assessment for effective for one of us might really feel like developing for another. And I think it's okay that there are differences potentially in how we understand those, but without kind of an understanding of where those differences are, it makes it a little bit difficult to know how to take, how to interpret those color differences on the bar graph. So
yeah. Some of this conversation certainly is calibration, right? Particularly when you get to the conversation about, this is why I like to look at the alignment of like, when I see the whole rainbow of like, somebody said never, somebody said sometimes, somebody said, we look at that because somebody's, most of the time or whatever is somebody's sometimes, and so we do talk about like, are we really in disagreement as much as it looks like, or is this a matter of how we read the question and interpretation, or I read it this way, or maybe just that like, I said never or whatever because I've never experienced this, because I haven't been on the board long enough. It depends on how it's read. Thank you. Any other questions any of you had that you want your colleagues to keep in mind as we go through this? Okay. So let me just show you what I saw, and then this is your conversation. I just want to show you what I saw as your overall, what I saw as your overall strengths, opportunities for improvement, and then where you disagreed, because we get a report on that I don't send you. It's just a bunch of numbers. So as you mentioned, your conducts, your ethics, and your relationship with the superintendent were certainly highlighted here. mutual trust, respecting each other's roles and responsibilities. I know that that sounds like, oh, roles and responsibilities, but again, this is a very foundational piece. You all know all of the evidence that shows that if you don't have this piece, you will negatively impact students. And so this is critical to your functioning. This is why I'm always saying, like, you all should put in like a proposal to present at a convention about something, because you have a very healthy core, which I did tell Vince, and he needs to pass on to you. I want you to put in a proposal to talk about your MSP work. So please do that, because I think that the work that you have done, others need to hear about. Another strength that came up was your budgeting and financial accountability. You reported that you base your budgeting talks and your decisions on student needs, your goals, and your ability to meet those needs. And all of you have a basic understanding of district revenues and expenditures. This is pretty important, especially that first bullet, that you're basing your decisions based on student needs, which also tells me that you're basing your decisions based on the equity lens that you've created. Because if you're using that lens to talk about student needs, then you're making those decisions according to the lens that you created, that you said you would use to make those big decisions. And then the next one, not a lot of boards get very high marks on yet. This is a newer one in our newer tool. This one and innovation don't get very high marks yet, this systems thinking piece. This is partly, you don't shift problems to other parts of the system. So you're not taking a problem here and just sort of putting it over there for another piece of the system to deal with. You enable the creative process in parts of the system so that they can create the solutions to their own. There's some level of autonomy there, and that there's work collaboratively with other agencies. You may not necessarily do that work You may not necessarily do that work on your own as a board, but you enable the system to be able to do that, and you support it. That's the key there. So thinking in terms of systems, thinking through policy and budget and your impact collectively on the whole. And I think that when you talk about that community engagement piece, that really intersects with systems thinking as well. I know that you rated yourself as rather low on that, but part of bringing along that systems thinking is also bringing along that community engagement piece. Any reflections on this or thoughts about what I have here for your strengths?
That aligns with what we read.
Good. It would be unfortunate if I put up something that was like, what is she thinking? Okay. Okay, so as you all mentioned, the areas of improvement that I saw as well, that you are still working on your cultural responsiveness. One of the things that you rated yourself lowest on was that district staff maybe don't necessarily yet represent the entire, the diversity of the culture of your community. Community engagement, still wanting to solicit input from all areas of the community, which I know we spent time looking at in your MSP project, and ensuring that your vision and goals are collaboratively developed with stakeholders. This is just your MSP project, right? And implementing what your plans were. And then using data for continuous improvement and accountability. This is another piece that is part of that community engagement. Communicating to the public how decisions are linked to student data was a big part of that, where you rated yourself lower. So, I think your project is timely. The next piece is implementing that. So next year, this will look very different. Any thoughts or additions that you would add to this? Like I said, you brought this up well before I did, but any additional thoughts or statements on this? Therese.
Yeah, just one on the question about the district employees and being represented in the community. We've talked about this lots of times, right? Because it's a challenge. And I was thinking about it, in terms of looking forward, like this is not an issue that we can solve just by ourselves, right? Like this school board cannot, because we are not in charge of how hospitable or affordable or accessible the community of Corvallis is to make it possible to create a community and a home where culturally diverse folks want to come and be. And so it got me to then this thinking about what kind of dialogue are we having with other community organizations that also need to be representative of the community and may not be. I'm thinking about our police department and city council and EMT and fire response. Like these are also entities that serve and touch all the corners of our community. And I think they probably aren't any more diverse than we are, and maybe share some of the same challenges around how to improve that. What I don't know is if they share the same level of concern that it needs to be addressed. And I would really like to know if this is something that is somehow unique to the school district, that we see this and go, we want to improve this, or if there are other, community wide partners that also are looking internally and wondering what they can do. That might, just be a good, bigger conversation than just, internally, because we talk about it at this table a lot. And every time we talk about it, I think, and also we can't change the cost of housing. We can't, all these factors that we've identified lots of times. So I would be curious about what we can do to raise the conversation to other stakeholders that should care about this, and perhaps do, and we're not talking about it together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ryan?
For me, the piece in here is around the data, the information around student data. And that's one that I expect will go up. It's sort of the result of the pandemic and not having a data-rich culture for a while. And so I think that's an easy one for us to quickly address.
Shauna?
I was just going to say it was nice to see that none of this came out as a surprise, as you pointed out too, Kristen, in terms of all of these were discussions that had already been emerging in some of our strategic planning and goal setting process for the coming year, as well as our dedication to really looking at and thinking about the ways that we both communicate the work of the board to the community, as well as really engage in community listening and other ways of connecting. So it was nice to see that what came out in the survey aligned with where we're already headed, what we're already talking about, what we've already developed and looked at in other spaces in our work as being areas for growth and needs for that growth.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So here's the information I had that you didn't have. I mean, you can look at it, but here's where I got data that you don't have. So here's where you were most incongruent. Right. So this is where, you can look and see the colors across the spectrum, but there's also some number crunching. On page 18, there was a piece about culture and climate. So again, there's clearly some calibration to be done here. There may be quite a bit of it that has to do with even individual words in a question. But there was some disagreement on whether or not there was accountability on the board for the improvement of culture and climate, and whether or not the board modeled relationships built on trust and respect at all times. So there was that piece, again, starting on page 18 there, if you wanted to flip through and look at it. In the innovation and creativity standard on page 24 there was some variance on whether or not that folks felt like there were time and opportunities for creative thinking. I think that was even an individual question, and meeting agendas that allowed folks to identify and explore strategic issues. So the innovation and creativity one is a little bit sort of nebulous at this point. I get a lot of questions about this standard. We're trying to help boards sort of pinpoint what this means. It's in the systems thinking bucket, but really it's about, how does a board plug into, without micromanaging, innovation in its work. You absolutely can. I know we don't have time to get into this tonight, but I think there was maybe this is worth a bigger conversation about if you're interested in how you plug into this and looking at the technical aspects of that you identified here as maybe having some disagreement on that would allow you to step into this space. And then the vision directed planning starting on page 4 there. Again, collaborating with the community. There was some disagreement on there about articulating core values and beliefs. I just saw this that, came up in your last MSP work. And then having a vision and expectation, this should say for excellence, sorry, beyond present performance. And I thought that one was kind of interesting. So what did I say that was on page 4? I want to just read that exactly. Yeah.
Question 10.
Question, which question?
10.
Question 10.
10.
Page
Yeah.
5.
Oh, it's page 5.
Okay,
Sorry,
here.
it's page 5. The standard starts on page 4. The board promotes a vision and expectation for excellence beyond present performance. And that one popped up in the numbers, at least, as fairly incongruent. It's not that low, but it popped as one of the higher ones as far as incongruent. So so maybe one to just visit as part of your overall discussion. So I wonder if you want to discuss any of these, if that's a conversation you want to save, because my next question, my last question for you on this is, what do you want to do with this? Like, how do you want to take this forward? So this may be part of a jumping off point into that question. But, and what I can do is even stop sharing this and bring up, if you want to look at individual things, I can bring up on my screen your evaluation. So here's where I sort of stop talking and say, what would you like to do with this tool, with these results? And I can send you these slides if you want them, if that
That
makes
would be great.
Yeah, please.
When I see you taking pictures of the screen, I'm like, I bet you want the slides.
Yeah, I do. I have a question. Maybe this is for Sarah and Ryan. What's our plans for the retreat in August?
So one of the things we have been talking about is a couple things. One is having some time to do a bit of a book study. So doing a little bit of education of the board. And so that's part of my SUPS report for tonight. So I'll look for you. Also to spend some time overlapping. There's 3 areas that we would benefit from community input in. One of those is related to some new requirements from the Department of Ed, where they collapse some grants together with some specific questions for community engagement. That's one area. A second area is that our communications department is looking at some sort of communications audit of the information that they share with the community, which is another layer of that. And the third layer are those questions that we surveyed the community around, and we have some theming, and we want to dig deeper into what those themes mean for community engagement. So what we wanted to do is spend some time talking about those kind of key questions and identifying how we go about gaining that information to bring it back to the board. So beyond just a survey, which community groups do we need to meet with, what kind of information do we have? So that's another area for our time in the retreat, and it aligns pretty well with the areas that I would anticipate the board will want to make improvements in.
And I sort of see this as, everything that Brian said. And I see these as, addressing where we've seen, areas that we have a fair amount of room for improvement in. And as we work on this outreach and community engagement on the survey, it's moving us, it's sort of setting up, having information so that as we develop our goal for our next round of goals, we're getting the information from the community that we need to be able to do that.
One of the other things that I am worried about to some degree is just the budget, the biennial budget coming up, and just even anticipating roll-ups. And so I think that, and coming to the end of the ESSER dollars as well. And so there will be some need to do some areas of reduction. And I think that starting those conversations now as we are engaging with the community is going to be pretty important. So that's really, again, I think we're just, why I said early on that I felt like in some ways we were identifying, maybe being ultra critical of ourselves around that community engagement piece, but just also because we know we need to go out and make the next iteration. I think that's really what we need to be thinking about and talking about.
Awesome. Could you just clarify by roll-ups, basically meaning reduction programs? So what do you?
The way that the state identifies the roll up in costs year over year, and the way that they're calculating it right now, or discussing calculating it right now, causes me concern regarding our budget over the next biennium.
So in other words, they would interpret the current service level as something that's much less than the actual
Calculating it inaccurately.
inaccurately. Okay, with that blunt terms.
Mhm.
With that, I like that. So with that, I think I agree with everything you're saying, and I think that's the right direction. And maybe the last slide that Kristen mentioned should be part of our, I don't want to say lens. Yeah, our focus lens. It's something that we would literally put on the board as we do our book study, as we do the communication audit, as we do revision of what we've been doing good and what we can improve. So we can really remind ourselves. One thing I would add to that, in addition to just using those areas of focus as a lens, as we're doing the retreat, is for the last question, and I would call in the Shana, Sarah, and Lou, is maybe continuing the same work we've been doing, is anticipating what areas of community interest and students' interest, and make sure they're front and center in our business. So we don't just do the compliance work, we really do the strategic transformational policies ahead of time. And we have done that. We have been ahead of the curve on many issues. And I can recite many examples, but really making sure that we elevate that, the board leadership communicate that with the board and also with the community, so the community knows what's ahead, and that is the transformational policy that we're planning for.
And I would encourage, now, under normal circumstances, if I didn't have this class, I would have said, let's drill down into some of these that like you really want to focus on. And we would leave with a couple of really board specific goals, like things that you wanted to do in your own professional development realm, right? Like you're going to have your own goals as they relate to your strategic direction, as they relate to your community engagement pieces. But I think it's also, something that I would recommend is, and what do you want to do like for yourselves with yourself, like for your own professional learning and development? And so my recommendation to you also is to, and you were already talking about this, bring this back in your retreat and focus on one or two things like, in this, whether it is continuing to build on a strength and continuing to strengthen that, or, looking at an opportunity for improvement, maybe one of each, or looking at, okay, here's where we find ourselves in most misalignment. What can we do? What does that mean? And what happens when those things are misaligned? What's our role in ensuring that they're not? What's our role in making sure that gets to a place where we're satisfied with that? So bring this back in your retreat in some form or fashion. Don't set tons of goals around this, right? Like maybe one or two, because you'll have other things that you want to do. But if I had more time with you tonight, we would talk for another half an hour or so. I feel like I'm just bailing on you, but yeah, this is a lot of information in a short period of time, and hopefully you'll be able to digest it more as time goes on. Ryan?
I feel like, because it's a new evaluation tool, I'm also feeling like this is formative rather than summative.
Yes.
And so I don't know that I'm feeling like you're bailing on us, because I think this gives us good information to come as we do an assessment next spring, that we'll be able to have more of a trend over time. And so I feel like this is, I'm looking at it differently than I typically do, just because it's a new tool.
And next year, and it's beautiful. You'll see all of it next to, and we don't intend to change anything. You'll see everything right next to each other. You'll see, you'll see where you've grown. You'll see where things have changed. And I think you're right. And, not only is this a new tool for you, for us, but it's also, like Sarah mentioned earlier, you're still coming out of a reactive phase. Like, this is all still contextual. There's no way you can look back at the previous year and be like, it was business as usual, and therefore we should have a really accurate assessment of everything that happened in a way that we could hold ourselves up to the highest expectations. It's just not. So, but good information. I'm glad that you did it. Anything else on this for now? Or anything I can do for you?
So if we are going to apply for the scholarship again next year,
You should vote on that tonight.
we need to add.
I move that we add that we add. Do I need to move right now?
Sure, we're in.
Typically, we kind of more as a straw poll.
Yeah,
And so I'm planning to get feedback from you
Okay.
in my search report.
yeah, so
Well, first requires an actual vote, am I right?
It requires a vote. You gotta show us that you voted.
Yeah, but on the application, or are you okay if we go without an objection, that we authorize the chair to apply?
All right, I will, here in this public meeting, I will tell you that you can go ahead and, have it as a discussion item. Turn in your application, vote at your next meeting.
Awesome.
I know our next meeting is,
July 6th.
I feel like I just got permission to turn in a late assignment.
Yeah, you did.
Okay. I
Teachers
just
said
want to
you
make sure
did.
that was the right, I was getting the right,
yeah, I think
Bye.
every year we get.
You do.
down as a point to discuss in the retreat.
Sorry, we went procedural. So Ryan, you were intending to give us a recommendation of which, where should we go? Or do you have an idea of where should we go?
With the overall
Station.
application and then area of focus.
Yeah.
My recommendation was going to be a continuation of our app related to community engagement.
Okay.
And I feel like our survey, our evaluation results would support that as a good direction. So,
Can I add a layer just because maybe Kristen have seen this already? I applied for systems thinking and equity work presentation in the fall. I'm thinking, and also since Kristen highlighted systems thinking there, I think community engagement not embedded, but integrated with systems thinking would be very beneficial because many times we hear about community engagement and it's like a shooting in the dark. Systems thinking allows the community engagement to be focused and to leverage systems and to have a highest impact. And also to have a candid conversation with someone who says you don't engage with the community when we don't vote in their favor. Is that no, or actually we are, and here's why we're making the decisions. And community engagement is part of the whole system. So I believe really elevating both in the application, I think would be really great.
Yeah. I saw that you applied. That's great. I'm looking forward to that. Not that I make that decision, but that'll be great.
I'm looking for co-presenters, if anybody.
All right. If you need anything else from me, you know where to find me. I'm going to hop off and go to my last class of the term.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Summer.
Bye.
So,
Would it be okay to take 5 minutes?
yeah, we can take 5 minutes and then, what time is it? Because the agenda has our next item starting at 6:30. So we actually have half an hour. So if we'd like to take 5 minutes, we could do that. But then if we wanted, we've got a few minutes. I don't know if it would be appropriate now to discuss a little bit about what we might want to do for our application. We would need to move to add something to the agenda, and I don't know if we can do that because it's less than 24 hours. We don't have the notice.
Oh, I I'm gonna wing it here,
Mhm.
as long as we're not making an action and say, oh, we are making an action.
Well, we can just discuss it, not vote.
Yeah.
If we just discuss it, but then when's our next meeting where we'd be able to vote?
Seven.
Is that enough? That's okay then.
The application does not take.
Very long.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, formally OSBA required to vote before 1st of July, but we have, if we vote on the 7th
I
of
see,
July, I
right.
don't think there
We're
were.
turning in our assignment late.
Yeah.
So, okay.
But what we usually do is turn in the application and then vote on it.
So I think it would be kosher for us to discuss it now and have it as an agenda item on July 7th. And we would add an agenda item right now for discussion.
I just feel like we're sitting here for half an hour if we don't.
Yeah, and
We're in the middle of. It's all estimated, it's time. I mean, I put that on the thing, so on the agenda, I don't think it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, or we could just continue with our meeting and finish it.
So what I'm wondering about is at the end of the meeting, we have board time of discussion. And I would like to hear a little bit more about Sammy's idea related to systems thinking, because I don't have enough clarity to be able to complete the application. So I'm wondering if we continue and proceed with the meeting, and when we get to that end time, we can ask you a couple of questions about your thoughts around that.
I think that.
I think that sounds good because then any staff who don't need to be here for that part of the meeting,
They can go home.
okay, let's do it. So let's be recessed for 5 minutes. So we will return at 6 o'clock. The meeting from the Corvallis School Board is back in session. The next item on our agenda is school board member reports. Does anyone have anything they would like to share this evening? No? Oh, Shauna, there you are.
I'll just comment on what a joyful week it was last week to be able to participate along with district leaders and fellow school board members and the community in graduation ceremonies across schools for the Wings program at College Hill, for Corvallis High School and Crescent Valley. And what an amazing feat for so many graduates, for their families, and for our community. It was just really a joy to be there in celebration together.
Grace?
Yeah, it's just similarly a lot of excitement as the school year is wrapping up. A lot of gratitude from teachers for making it through the year. A lot of administrators, I think, breathing a sigh of relief that maybe the longest school year ever has ended. I got to attend a 5th grade graduation, and I also was struck by how many of the kids I remembered from kindergarten, and I thought, at Corvallis community, we keep our kids stay. A lot of them stay, and that really is something in a town this size. I would have thought, and being a university town, that there would be so many more kids gone. But as I watch those kids walk across the stage, I remember putting their little art projects in their boxes in kindergarten, and to have watched them grown up was really quite special. So just really just kind of left me feeling of what a unique place we live in.
Yeah.
So, and that dang, they're cute. Let me tell you, so cute. Watching them walk across the stage, half still a kid, half thinking that they're ready to go to high school already, like watching them navigate that weird space was really, it was very precious. So.
Yeah. So I just want to echo the joy I felt that Shauna shared and that Teresa shared attending graduations over the last week, and we've got 8th graders graduating this week too, and just all the kids who persevered and made it through this year. You know, well done. Good for you. And I'm so proud of our students, and I'm so grateful to our teachers and our staff and our administrators and our nurses and our campus stewards and our culinary staff and all those people who have made this year happen in conditions that, I mean, our conditions weren't as difficult as they were the year before, but are just the sort of situation we found ourselves in was really difficult. And just so much gratitude for all the people who supported our kids in all the different ways people who work for the school district do that work. Because we needed you this year and we've made it. So have a good summer. Sleep late or go to the woods, whatever it is you do to
Sarah,
rejuvenate.
I just wanted to add to that the Garfield did something kind of fun. They had some kids come up and give small speeches, right? And what really struck me was how many times the kids expressed gratitude for the leadership of the teachers during the pandemic. There were 7 kids who spoke, 6 of them specifically talked about music and PE carrying them through that time. Teachers that, were reaching out. I just thought that was really, this has been really difficult 2 years, across the board. It's been a difficult 2 years to hear our kids reflect back on that and have the commitment of the teachers stand out to them as noteworthy, is something to say as they're walking out of their elementary school for the last time. To take the time to mention that was very touching. And I think a real testament to how, in the end, how thoughtful the planning was for how fast it had to happen, right? Like it was a lot of pivoting. What are we doing? U-turns, really. I mean, not even pivoting, like we had to go back. And yet what the kids walked away with was my teachers really cared. They were available. I thought that was really just a very impressive thing. And I will say it made me as a parent stop and check my attitude over the last 2 years and wonder if there were moments along the way when I was, I don't know, maybe my perspective wasn't quite where it needed to be about what was really happening for these kids. The kids, it was not lost on them, though. They made that very clear today. So
Yeah.
good job to the district and to the teachers. And I only heard from Garfield, but I'm sure that other schools would have had similar messages. And so, yeah.
Anyone else with comments today?
I have a quick ones. I want to echo the message of appreciation for the students who graduated. It's been really lovely to see the graduation and see folks graduate and celebrate. What else is there? A reminder of Sarah's recommendation for everybody who can attend OSBA summer conference. Please go. The pre-conference is actually about community engagement. And I'm not sure yet if I can make it. So if someone can make it, that would be great. And also the caucus is going to have a meeting there. So you're welcome to join us. Another thing that the OSBA in collaboration with the governor's office, we're working on a toolkit, a safety toolkit. And I got to have a quick look at it, and I know that POSA membership might get to receive it sometime during a meeting in the next couple of weeks. For those who need help and resources around navigating safety, privacy, it's really, I think it's a good step, and I'm still studying it. And it might include different dimensions that might be helpful for any elected members or administrators who want to navigate difficult times where their safety might be at question. So I want to appreciate your really OSBA leadership on that, and for those who would like to have access to it, maybe reach out to Ryan or me. Another thing I want to say in terms of walking in the woods, Sarah, I want to report an encounter with a constituent. I was walking in the forest, North Corvallis, and I told my friend, this is my city councilor from a distance, I can recognize her, watch me. So like, I have a zoning question. So she replied to right away, well, I have a school board question for you. What happened with the policy around banning concealed weapons? Did you take an action on that yet? So I was happy to report that's why we actually did. Sarah was persistent and made sure that we passed it as soon as it was an option for us, and it was no issue. And now we know the school boards are grappling with the discussion 5 months after the fact. I'm really appreciative of that we took an action and we made sure we prioritized kids at the center. And now supermarkets encounters will be also trailheads encounters.
Yeah, I got that thing. I've had that same question several times in the last week, and it was really nice to be able to say, oh, we did that.
Yes.
So thank you to everyone for making that pass. Out any further comments from the board? We move on to the superintendent's report.
Sounds great. And I have a few slides tonight for the SUPS report. Starting with the kids swinging is always a good way to start. So we'll just go to the next slide though. So to highlight our grad walks, so last Friday, in anticipation of the evening, our seniors walked through the halls of their elementary schools, and some of them walked through new schools that look nothing like their elementary schools they attended, but are the same schools. So I had a chance to be at Captain Jones Harrison, which was fun to see students come through. At Garfield, I know that they took photos of the whole group as a whole and had some gifts for the graduates. So again, it was just a way that we get back to the traditions that we've held, where our younger students get to see what it's like and kind of envision themselves as future graduates, and for our graduates to be able to see teachers and staff that were there to support them when they were young. So again, it was just a great feeling and a great day, a great way to start the day of graduation, a way to start a morning of graduation week for all intents and purposes. And here's a photo from College Hill graduation. So College Hill had 48 graduates that night at the event. And so again, College Hill graduation is always a particularly special event. One of the things that stood out to me that night was a student came up to me and said, hey, I need to leave early because I need to get to work. And so I need to get into where my clothes are so I can get to work. And so you think about that student and the experiences that they had and the challenges that they also faced, getting to that moment to walk across the stage. And that's why that graduation is so special to me. And that really summed up in that one interaction, why that graduation is so special. CHS, which is always a large audience, had they had 302 graduates that night. And then Crescent Valley with 205. So all in all, when we include our wing students, and we also include our life skills graduation, we had 555 graduates over the span of Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So again, just a lot to be proud of. And one of the things that stood out to me about, Therese talked earlier about the fifth grade speeches she heard today. One of the things that stood out to me about the graduation speeches was there's a theme of sort of unfinished business. There was sort of this piece about how we're graduating and we're going on to the next thing, but there were some aspects of where I was that I either missed out on, or I feel like I just didn't get that completion wasn't there. So it's not lost on me that we had to make some difficult decisions over the last couple of years that have impacted our students directly. And so while I was excited and I felt that pride, I also felt a bit about kind of the responsibility we've all held over the last couple of years and how that hasn't been easy to hold. So while I don't want to take us down a negative road, there is that responsibility that comes with managing a pandemic and also making sure our kids are cared for so they can walk across the stage at the end of the day. Summer school. So summer school starts for us June 21st. This year, we're going to have 780 students participating in summer school. Oftentimes we really looked at our student data to look at academic support, social skills, IEP recovery services. And so all in all, we'll have 780 students participating. We also have students that will continue to receive mental health services. So if you include that group in the overall number, it's about 1,000 students that will be supported through summer school and 150 staff members. So it's still it's the largest summer school we've had. Last year, I said that, and then this year even outdoes last year. So as we have a chance to advocate, the advocacy could be continuing with summer school year over year and having that information out to schools and districts early so we can plan around it and just anticipate that something that we can continue to do over time. So when you're in those when you're in the middle of the forest having a conversation, or when you're doing your legislative work, to be able to make sure that people know how important that is. As we begin to plan for the fall, we are already doing that. I'd encourage you to join me on the morning of August 29th at CV from 8:30 to 10:30 for a welcome back rally. And then the move is well underway. College Hill staff are packing up their things now. They're going to begin moving things here between June 27th and July 1st. So all of the moves are going to be happening soon. And so our board meeting on July 7th will be at Lincoln. So this will be the last board meeting we have in this space for the next year. We also have some retirees to recognize. Sandy Baumgardner, who's been a teacher at Mountain View, 36 years in education. Debbie Deegan, who's an administrative assistant at CHS. Often talk to her on the phone related to attendance. And after 18 years, she's retiring. Donna Chastain, who's been filling at Captain Jones Harrison for the last couple of years. John Gerd, who's been in maintenance at Crescent Valley High School. After 30 years, he's retiring. Claudia Hall, who does art at Linus Pauling. Chris James with our orchestra. David Milner, who's a math teacher at CHS. Karen Peterson, who's been doing life skills alongside Josh Keating. Bo Ruzak. Jane Stone from Letitia Carson. Betty Tucker, who's been in our technology department, who provided you with those Chromebooks tonight. And also Jan Roblicki, who has been an assistant at Franklin for 14 years. So we have a number of retirees who have a ton of institutional knowledge and have been serving our community and our kids for a long period of time. So if you know any of those folks and you run into them, please be sure to give them praise for their time in the district and as they open a new chapter. And finally, if anyone didn't know. If anyone didn't know, it's the end of the school year. And we just have a lot to be proud of. Yeah, there have been challenges this year, and at the same time, there's been a lot of successes. And it just feels good to be reflective and think about the things that have happened and the impact we've had on kids. So finally, with my superintendent report tonight, I have a book for you to read before we meet in retreat. It will be a quick read for you. Limitless Mind was written by Joe Bowler. And again, I just think it's a great way for us to continue to have the discussion around the needs of our kids. And there's also we provided these bookmarks to our staff just the other day, as well as a pin with our logo on it. So one of those for each of you. Thank you. And we'll make sure the other board members who aren't here get those as well. And we'll spend some time in our retreat in August discussing the book.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have a question, but I want to appreciate the work that was done, especially the last part of the school year just felt more and more normal.
Mhm.
And I just think that I think that being able to wrap up that way, I think was really good. So thank you for all the work that went into things like graduation and proms and field trips. I
Yeah.
saw kids lining up to get on a bus for a field trip, and it just felt good, and I felt good for them. They
Yeah.
got to do that. So thank you for all the work that went into having those things happen.
We just have incredible folks who work in our school district who make it happen. So I get to be the one to get the appreciation, but it's really the folks who are.
Who were
doing the work.
there, getting on the
And,
school bus for the field trip.
Getting motion sickness on the school bus. Supervising the field trip. One more time, man. I had to do it one more time. I don't know why they all want to ride in the back. Like, do they not understand? Gosh.
No,
No, well, I mean, maybe a little bit better, but not really. Not when you're 40 something, I won't say more, but no, the school bus is not gentle at that point, no matter what. But how it was cool that it got to happen, right?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, that was really special.
Yeah, Sammy.
So congratulations, Ryan, on a successful year, not as a superintendent, but also as a parent.
Yeah.
Congratulations to you, to your daughter and family, and also to the retirees who worked really hard influencing generations. I don't know if I shared this in the boardroom, but I saw this on Facebook Marketplace, the iPad that I bought. And it was somewhere in McMinnville. And the gentleman, he's a CFO of his company, and he's like, "Oh, you're from Corvallis." And I told him, "Yes, school board." And I was like, "Wow." So I don't know if my teachers are still alive. They're CB, and they really pulled me out of trouble. And I would not be where I am. They saved my life. I would not be where I am if it was not for them. And I just saw in his eyes, and I started welling up, and I'm reflecting on that, and I want to tell every retiree teacher that they have made that same impact on many people that they might not be able to tell them that. I was really grateful to hear that from someone.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Okay, without any further comments, we'll move on to our next thing on the agenda, which is public hearing for the public testimony on the 22-23 district budget. Do we have any public comments?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, then we will move on to the next item, which is resolution number 220601. The resolution to adopt the 22-23 budget, make appropriations, impose property taxes, and categorize taxes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, does anybody wish to make a motion?
I can make one. I move that resolution number 22-0601 be adopted to adopt the budget, make appropriations, impose property taxes, and categorize taxes for the 2022-2023 fiscal year.
Is there a second?
Second.
So it has been moved by Therese and seconded by Sammy that we approve resolution number 220601 to adopt the 22-23 budget, make appropriations, impose property taxes, and categorize taxes.
I actually have a question.
Okay.
That's okay. The last, second last paragraph in the resolution, is it something new that we've been doing, we're doing, and we haven't done in previous resolutions? Is there a legal requirement why we're doing it this way?
The second to last paragraph in the resolution.
Yes, like the, basically, the be it resolved, the way that they were breaking down the permanent rate, local option, and general obligation debt service. Like what's included in the education limitation, what's excluded from it,
Yeah, that's required by law.
and it's been there for a while. Okay,
I think it's been like that every year.
okay, then I wasn't paying attention. Thanks.
Is there any further discussion or question? Seeing none, Director Tomini, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Director Aladra, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Jones? Do you vote?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passes. We have adopted a budget for next year. The next item on the agenda is public comments, not related to the budget. Is there any comment this evening? Not. No public comment this evening, so we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is our bond program update with Kim and Dale.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm not sure I see Kim here this evening. I'm ready to roll if you folks are. Okay. This is a fairly short PowerPoint this time. We've all been super busy getting ready for the summer work. So let's dive in. Slide, please. Here's what we've been busy getting ready for. We have 10 active projects this summer, which is somewhat amazing. That number would have been smaller, but through unforeseen circumstances like fires and COVID and you name it, some of the projects have drifted into this summer. So it's a handful. The top 8 are buildings and site work or site work. And then the bottom section is site work only. And at Bessie and Lincoln, it's finishing the site work, basically getting lawns established, things like that. And in the case of Lincoln, getting a fresh start on the lawn that didn't make it over the winter. Bessie Coleman, lots of nice question? Nope. Bessie Coleman, lots of good progress. It's beyond that now. There is actually some concrete down the surround for the playground area, and the slab for that area pours next week, if I recall. You see bits of pipe here and there. I think on the next slide, which you can show, you'll see the underground detention system, which is what you have to do when you have limited site to create a drainage swale, which is quite common in other projects. But in this site, there was just not enough ground. So these pipes retain lots of stormwater. They're very long, and underneath parking and you name it, they're down there. And that helps, free up space for usable activities. Just another shot of the bike shelter. This is where a solar array, an educational solar array will go, is on top of that bike shelter. Letitia Carson, there's another play structure, a little closer view than you saw at Bessie Coleman. And that's just a nice action shot. Guys working hard to make that project happen. And I thought that was a nice, pretty good timing. They're starting to take down their equipment and scaffold and ladders and such. The masons are done at that site. And inside at Letitia Carson, just more hard work going on. These taping folks are just incredible, the speed they can apply that mud so neatly. Whenever I try it, it's just a big mess that I have to spend days sanding off. There's very little sanding that goes into the work that they do. It's almost applied perfectly. Slide. Catherine Jones. So those two projects are almost in a race. Letitia is a little bit further ahead on the inside of the building in certain areas, but they're both going to finish up this summer, so it doesn't really matter. Play structure and then the tail end of that addition. And this is a neat shot, shows the commons in there, how bright it's going to be with the daylighting. Same with that classroom, nice feel to it. Adams, we broke ground, tore up the area, what was the former covered play area. Then there was modulars in that region. And just, I think it was first of this week, they poured the footings for that new addition. So you can, if you look beyond, clear over to that fence is pretty close to the edge of the addition. So it's a good size piece of work out there. Franklin, the science room is looking a lot different now. And that's just getting started. But then the next slide shows it starting to actually take shape, those trusses being put into place. The old space, which was a locker room, really was discontinuous. There was walls and columns everywhere. And so to create a usable classroom, it required removal of that roof structure and replacement with a free spanning roof structure. Crescent Valley, they are gearing up to finish the seismic work in the gym. Last summer, and if I recall, it was COVID-related supply chain delays. They could not finish that seismic work, but they're back, and it'll finish up this summer. And there's a good example of supply chain, finally coming through for us. Those two doors at the bottom, they've been waiting a long time for those. If I recall, they should have gone in last summer, and they just recently went in. College Hill, you folks already know about the contract award. Our contractor, Todd, we've been having great prep sessions with them, and they're going to start work probably around late July, 1st of August. We're still fine tuning that with them. And about the move to the district office. This is a little more detailed look at what's happening to get CIMC relocated out to CV. That was a big effort. So kudos to the team that pulled that off.
Can I add something about that, Dale?
Certainly.
Can you go back one slide? So CIMC is, for those of you who don't know, is a space that holds a lot of our instructional materials that aren't held at each individual school. So you put in a request and the materials come to you. And so we hold a ton of materials there. All of that is getting moved out to CV for the next year, so we can continue to access those because it's permanently located at College Hill. So as you think about just all the different aspects of that move, there's a number of different programs that are also being shifted and a lot of materials.
Was that relocation effort funded the College Hill students was recognized,
Yeah.
or was it Wing student was recognized
For helping with.
for helping with that? So
Yeah.
that's what they help with.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they provided an expert.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those handwritten notes were seen on a whiteboard in a construction trailer, and school's out for summer, a popular rock song, but also a cause for celebration for the students and staff that get to take a little time off. But it also triggers the start of a ton of hard work for the contractors. But I wanted to show these things because it kind of lets us reflect on how tough these projects are to work in an occupied school versus an empty school. And I just wanted to reflect on that these guys are doing everything they can to make school possible and effective, even though they're building things right next door. So, any questions today?
Questions?
I'll go on, let's see.
I don't think
I don't have any questions.
So, yeah, so, thank you. First of all, I want to say, on the last point you mentioned, by the end of the summer, with the exception of College Hill, will the contractors start celebrating as the kids and staff come back to school, or is there any risks of needing more work beyond the summer for any projects except for College Hill?
Well, Mountain View and Adams will still be deep in construction. Looking at my schedule that I included on that front slide here, I think those are the big ones. Sheldon is going to be going in through the fall, but it's not a mega project. Yeah, that's the ones. So the workload for the contractors does diminish after the summer rush, and so does the risk, honestly. And that'll be nice to see. Once a project gets occupied, the risk has gone way down on multiple fronts.
Cool. I want to ask you for the College Hill, could you remind us, where is the funding source for the seismic upgrade?
For College Hill?
Seismic upgrade. No, sorry, for CV.
Oh, for CV. Yeah, that is bond work. We did not get a grant for that piece of the seismic work. It was part of the bond promises and funded as such.
The seismic grants we got before, those were for Letitia Carson, Catherine Jones Harrison, and Adams, and we did those the summer when we started to do the work on, once we completed the soccer and football fields and some of those early stages of construction.
Okay. Awesome. And are we expecting any excess of bond funds as we get in closer, or how are we in the ratio?
Did you say excess of bond funds?
Yeah.
At this point, we're trying to play it conservative, and we maintained our our unallocated bond reserves figure this month. We've also identified some elements that we're going to put on hold until some of this risk passes. And so we're still evaluating what that might look like, but it's scope elements that were not necessarily bond promises that we may we're going to put them on hold and make those decisions once a little more time passes.
What is our window to allocate those reserves if they haven't been allocated yet and all bond projects are completed? When is the expiration date on those funds?
We've already spent the 85% of the bond requirement. So it's, I don't know the deadline, but I don't think it's very short. I think there's plenty of time to figure out what to do.
Yeah, it's not a factor, and we would come back for recommendations from the board if we were in that situation. That would be a great situation to be in. I'm not overly optimistic that we'll come with a long list for you at this stage of the game. But that's how we talked about doing it about 4 years ago when we started this process. So we'd still follow through with that.
Awesome, thank you. No further questions. Great work. Thanks.
Yeah, just continued appreciation for the work that's being done here. Yeah, it's been awesome.
It's been an impressive scope of work in a period of time. Oh, and it was 4 years ago on the 12th, I think, right? That we approved this. And so it's great now, 4 years later, to be looking at a list of almost completed goals from that.
And it's really not that long for as many buildings that have been done.
Not at all. It's really quite
So,
impressive.
At our last bond oversight meeting, we broke into the sparkling apple cider to celebrate the fact that we had that last contract on College Hill in place. So again, yeah, it feels really good to be at this stage of the process.
And since we're wrapping up comments on the bond, I just want to once again just say how fortunate our community is that so many community members stepped in to bring leadership to the bond project. both in the design committees, brainstorming the design committees, and then the bond oversight committee, which has carried a load for 4 years to ensure that those bond promises were carried out to the fullest that they could be. And so, it's exciting to get to be on this side of the table and get to cast a vote for something that is so transformative for our community. But I think it's important to remember that a lot of the heavy lifting has been done not by people who are getting paid, and but by people who just want to see our buildings be the very best places for learning that they can be. So we have as a community, a debt of gratitude to those individuals. And when we're all done and the last thing has been done, we need to invite every one of them in so that we can take a picture of all the bodies that it took to make this thing happen, because it'll be a big group.
It's a really good idea.
Yeah, that would be great. End of bond project celebration.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be good. So any further questions or discussion for Dale on the bond update? So the next item on our agenda is the EV charging stations, which is the item that requires no action this evening, but if we've got any discussion or questions about that. Sammy?
So I did send them to Kim and Ryan in advance, and I'm gonna pull them up real quick. First of all, thank you for the update. It's phenomenal, great work. And I understand if we can't have the answers right away, but I'd appreciate feedback at any time. The first question is, would you like me to say them all or one by one?
One by one.
Okay. How much is the anticipated annual revenue if we charge with the suggested rates?
We don't have a good idea of the usage at this point because we haven't had the app set up to track usage yet. So this is like an initial first year. And so we would review at the end of the first year and make modifications if we needed to.
What is the overall cost of installing, I don't want to say charging stations on charging stations, the fee collection station on the charging station?
Yeah, so we're paying $5,000 per year to have the app activated for the charging stations that are currently installed. This service fee is also required to support maintenance of the unit and advertising their location. So it is a cost that is incurred even if we do not have even if we don't charge for charging. And so we're hoping that we'll have enough left over after the $5,000 to pay for the energy.
Okay. Can we provide credits or free charging for the district staff? Is that technically possible?
We couldn't do that because that would be a benefit. But we have had it set up that the charging rate is different Monday through Friday during the workday.
What is the average cost approximately per kilowatt hour or any other units compared to other stations in Corvallis? If there's a sample or a few examples or
Yeah, so ours is 25 to 50 cents, right? And so there's examples of 30 and 60, 39 and 79, 38 and 49. Okay. So we are on the lower side of that.
Okay. What is the percentage of the power coming from solar charging powered? What is the percentage of the power coming from renewable sources or solar charging compared to coming from the grid?
We'll have that information in the future once the app is up and running. Okay. But we don't have that information yet.
Okay. So the last.
It's not on the list.
So out of all of these, I have a surprise question, which is, Ryan, do you feel it is, I'm anxious, is it worth it to charge compared to really making it a free utility?
I think we need to charge rather than make it a free utility. One of the things I've noticed has been usage. I think it's important that we have some. I think it's nice that we have a lower rate, but I think we have to have some rate because over time we're still a school district and we're trying to accomplish a number of different things for our kids and our community. And I think that's a balance that we are trying to find in this as good community members, but also with the primary focus of educating youth.
Awesome. Well, thanks. Just want to thank you for tolerating my questions, and I think this is really great work. I'm really grateful that we're undercharging compared to other places. So we're giving our students and staff a better deal.
Truce.
I didn't have a question before, but now I do. So, with the rate being different Monday through Friday during the school day hours, if a community member, happens upon one of these spaces and they're unoccupied during the school day, they can access it? Okay.
And I think that's, and my experience has been that's happening. As I visit schools and I see vehicles, I think that's the case right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Really, I feel pretty confident that that's the case.
Okay. Usually people move their vehicle in an hour or two, or
I'm not as confident that that's happening. To be honest with you, I see vehicles that are parked there for longer periods of time. Okay, but also we're not in a situation to closely monitor that or do those pieces. We're just trying to make sure that it's an available resource.
But you're not yet getting complaints from people that they can't access them? Like staff, our staff having difficulty?
I haven't heard that.
Any further questions? And then we will move on to the next item on our agenda. Thank you, Dale.
Thank you.
Which is the middle school world language curriculum adoption. Nikki and Marcianne. Hello. Hello.
You want the tall one?
Sure.
I guess I would just start by saying this adoption came as a bit of a surprise. So we mapped out kind of all of our plans for adoption year by year and started looking at our budget. And we had planned to do this adoption next year. And at the same time, we had a group of teachers that were already piloting materials. And they contacted us and said, we really love these materials and would like to continue piloting. And we said, well, if you love them and you're ready to adopt, then why don't we have that conversation? And so here we are. I just want to like own that it wasn't in our initial plan, and it feels good to be doing it, and it allows us to have more budget for some large adoptions coming up next year, including 6 through 12 language arts and high school world language, English language development, and English language development. So
yeah, and I think the only thing I would add is that when we looked at the materials and we connected with the teachers, it really addressed a lot of the points that are really important to us as a district. So the materials are relevant, they're rigorous, they're engaging, they have authentic materials, the students are really excited about them, the teachers are really excited about them. And so we were able to, in the report, we were able to reach out to students and get some real positive feedback from them. And this will be a wonderful segue into the world language adoption, the high school level that we'll be doing next year. So we look forward to doing some continued alignment, continued professional development, and continued walkthroughs, which we haven't had a chance to do that as much as we've been wanting to because of. So we're excited about it.
yeah, I think one of the things that really stood out to me in our conversations with teachers was how this isn't just about teaching a world language, but it's about teaching a skill that can be used beyond school. And also how it is, in the classroom, it's not just about teaching language, but also about teaching culture. And that is one of the aspects of this curriculum that they really like, is it's not just solely language instruction, it is all of the cultural elements that are included in the curriculum. So I don't feel like we need to go through the board report. I think it's pretty clear, unless you would like us to. There is an overview of the curriculum. There is a video that was included in the packet, and then the student feedback, as Marcianne shared, is in there. And what I appreciate about this feedback is it helps give us a starting point with the teachers. So some of those rankings that are a little bit lower for the students. I think about that last one in particular, include suggestions for how to use Spanish in the future beyond the school experience as being really important, because I think that data about the connection to my next steps, the connections to real world, the connections to life beyond high school are something we've also seen show up in our youth truth data.
I do have a question. this is a good time to do
Yes.
that. So you, in the rollout of this, you talk about it, it's collaboration and curriculum alignment among 7th to 12th grade. Is that is that what that references to, the grades, right?
Yes.
So what are you, what we are about to be Linus Pauling, so I'm still sorting it all out, but what is the language curriculum for the 6th graders at Linus Pauling if they are, what's the word for it? If they do not test into the full immersion, the language arts and social studies course, and there, so my understanding is that then they will be offered a supplemental Spanish, not the social studies. So what is the curriculum for that? Will it be the same?
I believe it will be.
It will be this,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
all right,
yeah,
very
yeah.
good,
They have
Okay.
3 different levels that.
Okay.
are-
okay, great.
Yeah, and those teachers, and the students really love the materials,
Okay.
so it'll be exciting for them. Future student athlete.
Yeah, well, I saw the 7th truth, and I thought maybe, I didn't know if you guys were doing something that was
No.
different for 6th grade, or if it will capture them for the students that need that as well, so.
Do you have a question, Simon?
Quick one, could you highlight, great work, great reports, and excited about this curriculum. And could you highlight some of the considerations or dimensions of how the curriculum supports students experiencing disabilities, those on IEPs and 503s?
Yeah, well, the beautiful thing about this curriculum is that there's different modalities that are available within the curriculum. There's audio pieces and there's a lot of visuals, a lot of videos, a lot of different ways that students can learn language. So it's not just a textbook, there's more to it. It's really amplified for students. So that's one of them.
I mean, the other thing I think about is, the teachers requested that the materials be available digitally, and then
Yeah.
also to have sets of textbooks. So some students do better with a textbook than on the screen. But what I noticed about the curriculum is that multiple modality and the focus on listening, reading, speaking, and all the ways that you learn language.
Great question.
So I have a sort of comment and a question, and one is that I was talking to a teacher the other day, who teaches at Garfield, not at Linus Pauling, but she was saying that it's been sort of a frustration this year that kids who in kindergarten were really excited about dual language, and so this is what their school did, and it was no big deal. Then after kind of being away from really the immersion piece of the dual immersion program, have come back this year and are not as excited about language, and I kind of think it's, why are we doing this? This is silly that we have to be in Spanish now. And so I just wanted to comment that I really like that we've found a curriculum that really, teaches culture and how, why, speaking Spanish is useful outside of your classroom and going forward in your life. And so really is that sort of real world learning, making this applicable to your life. Piece to learning a language. I think having that really connecting sort of learning a language to living your life for kids, I think is really important. And it was, I think it will engage kids in a way, but the textbooks that I can remember having in Spanish class in high school that was sort of grammar and
They still be the
vocabulary.
same. They're quite old.
Probably not as old as me. But, and then my question is, so you were talking about looking at world language curriculum adoption going forward for high school next year. Is this one of the curriculums that we're considering, so that for students who start it in middle school, they're really considering continuing in the same program?
We do have a high school teacher that has also done some piloting of this. And one of the things we heard from our high school teachers when we met with them is their, and I think this is just a pattern we're seeing and I've seen in our adoptions, is that middle school teachers really embrace curriculum. And high school teachers, many want a curriculum as like a base and then really teach. I don't know. I don't know, it feels more individualized. So what we heard from them is like, we want to find something that all of us like and can use as a base and recognize that we all have very different approaches. I think that's also true at middle school, like all the teachers have different approaches, but their approach to curriculum is like, we really want something strong and foundational. So I know that they're using it and we'll be getting deeper into the conversation next year. They're doing the high school teachers are doing a review of curriculum.
Yes, yeah, and there were, from the state adopted curricula from the ODE, there were a lot more to choose from at the high school level for the different languages that are being offered. And so, like Nikki said, they're gonna have an opportunity this summer to peruse it's called the video caravan, which is really interesting. But just take a look and kind of just peruse the different materials that are out there. But our intention in the fall is to bring them all back together and have those conversations, not only about the curriculum, but about instruction and alignment. That's a big thing. And to give, to really listen to the perspective of the students that are looking at those materials and also to the teachers, how they want to teach and have a little bit of flexibility in how they instruct. So we want to be very, I guess, aware of that. But also find some updated materials, because the materials that we have now are pretty old. I think we put in our
Over
report
a
that it's been
decade.
a decade.
And like, I feel like
so-
everybody we talked
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
we said, what have you experienced in adoptions before that,
Yeah.
really helped it to be successful? And they were like,
Yeah.
I don't think I've done this before,
Right.
which that isn't true in other subject areas. Maybe adoptions have been more regular.
And the one thing I'll add to, I know I was going to end a little bit, is an important thing for us too is also to include community voice in our adoption. Part of our social studies adoption that we did was a forever ago, but wasn't that long ago, was really including our community's voice and perspective in the adoption process. And so that's something that we also want to include next year, because it's an important piece, especially when we think about the different languages and having them be really relevant in our community. We can show that our students, like for example, our Delta community can be part of the review of materials as well. So that was really important last time. So we will continue that in the following year. So yeah, good. Thank you. Yes.
Any other questions or comments, Shauna? Well, I'm Sammy. Okay.
Madam Chair, I move to adopt Anticulturas for the middle school Spanish language curriculum.
Second. That has been moved by Director Alagrava and seconded by Dr. Jones, or Director Jones, that we adopt the Anticulturas for the middle school Spanish language curriculum. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. Director Tomini, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Alagrava, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Jones, how do you vote?
Aye.
And I vote aye. We have a new middle school language curriculum. Thank you very much for this work. And the next item on our agenda is our consolidated action. As a reminder, the items in this portion of the agenda are for action. Does anyone have a question about anything in this portion of the agenda? No, seeing none, we have a motion.
Moved along.
Move again, because mine's not open and my computer's about to die.
Madam Chair, I move to approve consolidated action.
A second.
So it has been moved by Director Alagrava and seconded by Director Jones that we approve the items in consolidated action. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Director Tomini, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Alagrava, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Director Jones, how do you vote?
Aye.
I vote aye. Passed unanimously. So the final item, no, it's not the final item. We got a few other things. Next item on our agenda is consolidated information. The items in this portion of the agenda are for discussion only. Does anyone wish to discuss any of the items in consolidated information?
April financial.
Okay. Anything else that we want to pull?
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything.
I'm
either.
sorry, I'm gonna channel Tom Saray. And under the repairs and maintenance services, I'm wondering what is the hoods of Clackamas and K-12 Tech Midwest? They're back to back in page. Can't see the page. But it's on
As you scroll through on board, but does it have big, oh, you're doing it on, it's the whole packet, aren't you?
whole packet, yeah. So if you go to, if you have April financials, it's one document, that will be page. Maintenance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
What's the items?
Repair and maintenance services, it's a Clackamas and K-12 Tech Midwest.
What's practice have to do with the ventilation hoods in our kitchen? You know, that one. The other one, I don't know, but I'm assuming it's some sort of technology. Service that they have done.
Or servicing devices.
I don't know. I've never heard of that vendor before, so it might be. a new one.
We can find out and send you all the information about who that is.
Awesome, thanks.
So any other questions about consolidated information? And no more questions. We will move on to our next item on the agenda, which is board member comments. So we had some discussion earlier about questions for Sammy. So does anyone else have any comments you would like to share now, or should we just move on to our other discussion?
I just have one quick one. Just a reminder, community members that might be listening, that some of the Lynn Benton Community College summer camps still have some slots. And through wonderful partnership with our school district, those camp slots are free to Corvallis City school district students. So if you're looking for a spot for your kiddos to go, check out their website. They have some really neat things lined up.
Wide array this summer.
They do. My son is doing rocketry and underwater roving vehicles, which is,
Wow.
that's gonna be so cool. I wanna go.
So questions about the ideas for our scholarship application.
So the two I wrote down were community engagement, which is a continuation, and also the systems thinking. And so one of the things I was hoping you could do, this is Brene Brown language, but can you paint done for me? Meaning, can you explain what those two things look like together and what you would see as a completed project?
Yeah, while I speak, is it okay if I email Kim or something to share on screen?
Sure.
They can't forward it. Link, there we go. So the way I see it is community engagement is an activity. Systems thinking questions or systems thinking used in community engagement is a lens or tracks for the activity where you're not shooting darts in the dark and saying we're doing community engagement, but are we hitting the mark or not? That's where I think is the difference. So a very good example for the education field, the equity lens that we use is one of the pillars of systems thinking. We're asking deliberate questions that address several dimensions of systems thinking elements that makes us able to achieve our objective, whether the objective is academic or community engagement or bond decision, without exacerbating the outcomes based on race, gender, etc., and helping systems change that helps addressing equity. So equity lens questions are actually one great example that I would use. The other example, and did you get the email? Not yet.
I sent it. He just.
Awesome. The next example is there are several habits that people can ask themselves, and as they do, and they can have a better understanding of what's the problem at hand. So let's say the first one seeks to understand the big picture, and if you click the flip card. So when someone seeks to understand the big picture for an issue, let's say math education, we have 7 questions that could help us understand the big picture and focus on the forest as well as the detail of any one tree. So one question I would ask when we have a community engagement activity, make sure we're applying the big picture's habit, seeing the big picture habit of system thinking, is the question, how can I maintain balance between the big picture and important detail? Another question, what time frame should be considered as I view this issue or this system or this program that we want to initiate around community engagement or around soliciting feedback? Am I keeping my focus on areas of influence rather than areas of concerns that I cannot influence? So really having, this is actually an amazing question for community engagement on advocacy. Let's say an example of disability rights for students. One would ask, can we influence funding? Can we influence maybe, but can we influence decisions around budgets? And what's the difference layers of influence and understanding jurisdictions of that help us really have a good understanding of the big picture. So when we try to engage the community or the community wants to share their voice, they will be able to share their voice in a way that's really grounded with some golden questions that help us have a productive conversation that addresses the system rather than just a topic without clear direction. And then just to go over some other skills, a system thinker oversees how elements within the system change over time, generating patterns and trends. So what we do today and this year might influence next year in an exponential way. And if we scroll down to another example, changes perspectives to increase understanding. So seeing different angles, and this is one of the questions actually that we have in the equity lens. Identifies the circular nature of complex cause and effect relationships. So how their causal relationships are in a certain system. And this is a good example, actually, if we flip the card out on circular nature, where you could see the differences between one thing and the other, like hunger and eating. A system thinker sees the interdependencies in the system and uncover circular causal connections. How do parts affect one another? Where does circular causality feedback emerge? Is one feedback loop more influential over time than another? If yes, how? These are really simplified questions that are available for the common person or students, even if they can't. You can use them and really leverage those other habits. Let's go quickly over other thinking skills. Considers how mental models affect current reality and the future. Considers an issue fully and resists the urge to come to a quick conclusion. Uses understanding of systems structure to identify possible leverage actions. Recognizes the system structure generating its behavior. Considers short-term, long-term, and unintended consequences of action. Checks results and changes actions as needed, successive approximation. Surfaces and tests assumptions before rushing into conclusions. Recognizing the impact of time delays when exploring cause and effect relationships, and that time impacts the behavior of the system. Pays attention to accumulation and rather than rate of change and their rate of change, and makes meaningful connections within and between systems. So these are really some of the examples I can think of when we engage in community engagement. We want to really be mindful that those habits will help us go from, not necessarily from coming to A to B, but help us have a good path that gives us a better understanding of the issue. And when there are conflicts in perspectives or there are different angles, we can ask the questions where we can either bring consensus or a better understanding of the issue at hand.
So, some of the questions generated here may be beneficial questions for us to ask one another as we're talking about our plans around community engagement. Is that, that kind of sum up what you're thinking?
I would say it might trickle up or trickle down as well through the activities, all the way from how we design our community engagement,
Yeah.
the questions we ask ourselves on a policy level or objective goals level. So really for us to prioritize which leverage actions are the most important for us as a board. And it could go into the how we communicate or what questions we ask the community when we solicit feedback as well. So it's really the whole range, I believe.
So how about for the other board members, how does that seem to fit what you're, as we put the application together for the OSBA program to incorporate the systems component in our communication and community engagement?
I mean, to me, I think there are aspects of what. Yeah, there are aspects of this I think we need to build into how we communicate. We need to communicate in a way where we're not just gathering comments without any purpose. We're not, we're gathering comments that, as you said, may not go from A to B, but may help us figure out what B needs to be. And so we can develop strategies from there. I think we also need to be careful. I mentioned this to Ryan. We need to be careful about how we gather community community input, because the last thing I want to do is to have people in the community feel like we gather input and then we, it's just this exercise and patting ourselves on the back because we gather. Because I think then we end up creating a system that has negative feedback because people become less willing to work with us as we go forward. So I think, I think just in how we need to think about this. I like systems. I like to think of, I'm not good at the trees very often. I like the forest. So I think there are sort of pieces of this in, how we need to think about this, whether it's becomes, officially a focus of our application or not. Especially, without having a lot of time to sort of think through it. I think that's sort of where if we're gonna do this quickly, we need to get this in fairly quickly. So in some ways, I think how I think about how we need to communicate with the community, we've got some aspects of systems thinking built into that. How I think about it already. I'm not the whole board, and I'm me. So whether we need to officially pull that out, right now, a week before the application due, I don't know. The Tracy.
Yeah, I mean, so pragmatically, and not being the person who is filling out the application, which I know that we will see it. I'm not sure how exactly we operationalize this within the plan. That feels a little bit vague to me, not because the content isn't really important, because I think it is. And I think it would be really helpful to have a framework that we explicitly call out. It will, I think, improve the ability for the community to interact with our process a little more if there's some clear process, right? And so I like all of that about it. I wonder if we need to include it called out in the application at this point to get the application done. I'm inclined to say that with a week to go, we should commit ourselves to the little minimum amount that the application requires to get it submitted, so that we can have more discussion about what we would do with this model, how we would apply it in our actual process. Not because I don't think we can use it, but because almost half of us are not here to have this conversation right now. And I don't know if the 3/7 of us that are not present will be as warm to it. And if, so I'd be reluctant to put it in and obligate ourselves to it, with only. So with barely 50% of us here to have that conversation. Is there a way that we can submit the application without having to commit ourselves to this until we can involve the others in a conversation and still meet the requirements of the application?
Yeah, my experience with OSBA, and because this will be the 4th year in a row that we've done it, that there is quite a bit of flexibility. And what I've also noticed is that when we come back together and meet together, we often modify what our initial approach was anyhow. So I think we have quite a bit of flexibility in that. What I'm thinking about is how some of those questions may be beneficial to spur the conversation during our retreat, related to, again, getting to what our end goal is, or what complete looks like to us.
And I wonder if we could pull out some of those and identify them, without necessarily committing ourselves to adopting an entire framework, without more discussion within other individuals. And there are some really critical perspectives not represented tonight that I would want to make sure, given their area of expertise, that they're able to ask questions about this framework that I'm just not going to think of. And so I want to make sure that there's room to ask those questions of it. And not because I don't think that it would stand up to it, but because I can't ask those questions.
Yeah.
Right.
So, go ahead.
I think that in the past, when we've done this, I feel like our first training meeting is often we're sort of deciding, what we want to do and what our goals are and how we're going to approach it. So I think without, formally including a systems thinking lens in our work, if, through discussions we have at the retreat or something else, we could very easily incorporate some of these questions, at least in our approach when we start the training. So I think by not officially including it in our application, it doesn't eliminate the ability to use a systems thinking approach, but it gives us the flexibility to decide with everyone, with maybe an opportunity to learn a little bit more, because there's also we're not all experts on this, so it's hard to know, like, yes, this is great because we know so much. So I think we should not, my inclination is that we should not include it as part of the application, but should be open to at least aspects of it as we think about what we're doing.
I think I have enough information to go ahead and complete it, and we'll bring it back on the 7th of July for action.
So I'm just gonna throw out a reach goal for us, that next year we do this before the deadline, so that we have time to have that conversation. And I will say it's a reach goal because 4 years, I think we've done it once. So putting it out there for us, I think we should stretch ourselves.
But they always accept us.
I know they do, and I think we have, so a little bit of it's some street cred that we have. And also, our intentions are always, I think, very well aligned with the purpose of something like this. But I think we should make an effort, because it always feels a little bit like we're really coming in right under the wire. And some of the, like this question, it would have been really good to have this discussion a month ago or 2 months ago, so that we could educate ourselves a little bit, so that we could include it, because we're getting by because they're not asking for a robust application. But anybody that submits applications for approval knows that robust is often required. And so it would,
it's not that they're not robust. They're just not as detailed, because we then decide on how we're going to do the project later.
Well, anyway, I think it would be a great aspirational goal for us to think ahead and not feel like we're responding to the moment, but really actually getting out in front and saying, well, what as a board, we are supposed to bring some vision and leadership. What are we going to bring? And ask of ourselves and our superintendent, rather than does anybody have a great idea? Because we need to turn this in.
Yeah,
You
well,
know.
I think we could very easily put it on our agenda planning document earlier in the year, so we can start thinking about.
Yeah.
And I have an April 3rd meeting to
Yeah.
make that decision, and of April 3rd of 2023, I'll be thinking about that again.
Good, that's very specific. I like that. That's good. I'll put it on my calendar for April 4th to see what you thought about it.
Is that your evaluation date?
No, it's just the beginning of April, first Monday of April to be thinking about it.
Moving in spring.
Mhm.
That's good.
So are we good on that for now?
Yeah, I am.
So just a few thoughts I'm having as we wrap up this year, since I will be kind of on a few word on July 7th. To throw that in.
That's literal.
I would be kayak
You're actually gonna be on
fjord, on July 7th. So as board chair, I sort of feel like I stepped in and got on a train that was already running this year, so have felt a bit like I'm doing catch up all year. One of my goals this summer, just so you'll know, is to have coffee or something with all the board members at some point this summer, so we can just have a chat. And as part of that, I'm thinking about what, as we're thinking about what are the sort of transformational things. I feel like we got kind of detoured away from some of that work. So, just, those are the kind of things I want to start thinking about again. Sammy?
I just Lou just joined us.
Oh, she did. Lou, we're about to wrap up.
She's in there for
Lou, I'm about to adjourn. See if she hasn't come be a big surprise for her.
it. Shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lou, can you hear us? We're about to adjourn, but we're in board comments. So is there anything you wanted to share with us before, since you've made the effort now to join us from the airport? Is there anything you'd like to share with us before we adjourn?
Can you all hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay, I'm not at work, so sorry about the background, but I made it take some time for the end apparently. For a board member comments, I just wanted to say it's been a wonderful year, and I'm really glad and proud of the work that the district has done coming back from the pandemic. And I didn't get to do comments at the beginning, but being able to go to safe meetings has been really meaningful and helping see where the needs are as well as where some of the successes are. And I also really enjoyed being at the Impact Day as well and offering some work there and seeing the same kind of positive impact through actions that the district is making to support students, especially this year coming back. And I'm really excited to see what next year has in store.
Okay. Well, do you have something else?
Can
Amy?
you finish your thought?
Oh, just, you guys were thinking about going forward into the next year. I'm hoping there will be fewer detours over the next year. And we do have maybe potentially some budget issues that are gonna rear their heads, but just thinking about the sort of transformational pieces that we've we maybe put to the side a little bit over the last couple of years, and as we think forward to what we want to do for our kids and our schools and our teachers and staff. I would love to hear that from people as we sort of have a little break and start thinking about the next school year. So. Anything else tonight?
Yeah, just before we completely officially wrap up, I want to acknowledge Sarah and Lou and Shauna for their leadership for our board. And I'm really looking forward to going into another year with you guys at the head. And I think it's going to be a really exciting upcoming year. Just a lot of gratitude for your willingness to step into a really important role of making sure that our board has momentum. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I want to thank Sammy for serving an extra half a year while I was kind of in limbo.
Thank you for doing that. That's right.
Anyway.
Yeah. So with that, the meeting is adjourned.